Tonight, the opposition says its election campaign promises will cost more than $7 billion as the Premier completes a multi-seat blitz. I'm Lexy Hamilton-Smith and this is ABC News Queensland. Senator Lydia Thorpe backtracks on claims she never pledged allegiance to the monarch. Pacific nations put climate change and fossil fuel exports at the centre of Commonwealth heads talks. And thousands strip bare the Story Bridge to be used as a backdrop for a famous photographer. Good evening. The LNP has released its long-awaited election costings 2 days out from polling day. It includes a promise to rein in almost $7 billion spent on consultants, but Labor has derided the plan as a fantasy.
24 days down, 2 to go. Bring on the multi-seat mega blitz of the state's southeast.
We'll always be tight, mate, but we're fighting hard to the end.
Stephen Miles started on the Sunshine Coast, focused on babies. Just as well, there are no votes here.
I want to ask him.
The independent candidate for Caloundra was keen to meet him.
What's his name? Stephen, isn't it? Yeah. Steve.
The Premier wasn't interested. 69-year-old Michael Jessup has been charged with unlawful stalking and possessing a weapon, which he denies.
I've been charged with stalk. Apparently I'm a stalker.
At this holiday park in Maroochydore, there were plenty of beachgoers, but not many voters.
You guys, we're on holiday to New South Wales, but
we're not from Queensland, so you can't comment.
This resident is.
We're probably hoping for a change. We're from rural Queensland. I probably don't feel very heard out in that part of the world.
Well, I think what you've all seen of me over the last 10 months is I'm competitive and that I like to stay busy.
The LNP leader was also keeping busy, confronting hecklers at this pre-polling booth.
They don't believe you anymore, mate. It's over.
You gonna hold a conscience vote? Yes or no?
They don't believe you anymore, mate.
Yes or no?
They've seen the scare campaigns.
Yes or no?
They want a fresh start.
He let his treasurer do the talking in Brisbane to reveal how the LNP would pay for its election promises, expected to come in at $7.1 billion. They include $1 billion to lock in 50-cent fares, $150 million for youth justice early intervention, and $27.5 million for free health checks for kindy kids.
The Liberal National Government will not be borrowing to fund our election promises.
A centrepiece of the LNP's plan is an in-house consultancy group. At a cost of $87 million over 4 years, the group is aimed at reining in the growth of external contractors, saving $7 billion and giving power back to public servants.
The savings that the LNP proposed to make don't exist.
Debt is projected to come in at $171.3 billion by 2027-28. Under Labor, it would be $176 billion. The LNP intends to claw back $925 million by axing the Pioneer Burdekin pumped hydro project, but it hasn't put a single dollar towards any smaller scale projects, despite previously promising to explore such options.
Let's get through the election first, have the discussions with Queensland Hydro. That's the appropriate thing.
Today, David Crisafulli's pumped hydro hoax has been revealed.
As for Labor, we already knew it had more than $9 billion in re-election commitments to be funded by borrowings. The headline costs $1.4 billion on free school lunches and more than $1 billion on 50-cent public transport fares.
These election commitments are genuinely fully costed. They are genuinely fully funded.
In far north Queensland, a snap poll was underway courtesy of Jack, the clairvoyant croc, sizing up both leaders before making the call. Perhaps biting off more than he could chew. Jack Mackay, ABC News, Sunshine Coast.
Renegade Senator Lydia Thorpe has walked back her account of her parliamentary swearing-in day, saying her mispronunciation of the oath of allegiance was in fact a mistake. She told the ABC yesterday she swore allegiance to the Queen's heirs, not her heirs, sparking calls from the coalition to have her suspended.
3 days on from this outburst before the King, Lydia Thorpe remains in the spotlight.
The whole world is talking about it, and my people are happy.
Critics say Monday's protest broke her oath of allegiance to the monarch, an oath the Victorian Independent pointed out yesterday she actually fudged.
Her heirs and successors according to law. It wasn't her heirs, it was her heirs that I was giving my allegiance to, and now that, they're no longer here, I don't know where that stands.
The opposition is seeking legal advice on whether that mispronunciation could be grounds for dismissal.
What we see now is a circumstance that creates a doubt over her eligibility and validity to have taken up her seat in the Senate.
By mid-morning, Senator Thorpe's explanation had changed.
My English grammar isn't as good as others, and I spoke what I read, so I misspoke. Well, it starts with a H, so...
Lydia Thorpe has found a smattering of support from the Senate.
It's her right as an Indigenous woman and as an Australian citizen and as a senator to raise these issues. I don't have a problem with it at all.
Okay.
In fact, I found her words deeply moving.
She says she's speaking for those outside the halls of power.
All Aboriginal people that I bumped into around the street have all pulled me up to say, "Oh, Michael, did you see that woman on their TV? She's standing up for us."
Constitutional experts believe because the senator signed the oath, she did swear in correctly. Still, the Senate could vote on a censure motion, a symbolic condemnation with no legal consequences.
And we'll work with people across the chamber about what the appropriate response is.
I'm an independent. No one can kick me out of there.
Defiance until the end. Isabel Rowe, ABC News, Canberra.
Pacific countries are ramping up pressure on Australia over climate change as Anthony Albanese lands in Samoa to join a large meeting of Commonwealth leaders. King Charles has also used his first day in the country to highlight the existential threat fossil fuels pose, not just to the Pacific, but, he says, to the world. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedges is in Samoa for the meeting.
The Pacific's beauty is fragile and its future uncertain.
We will not sit quietly and allow others to determine our fate.
As sea levels rise, Pacific leaders today launching a new report which finds 3 wealthy countries, Australia, Canada and the UK, have been responsible for more than 60% of emissions generated by new coal and gas projects in the Commonwealth since 1990. Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feleti Teo has signed a landmark pact with Canberra, but says if the federal government doesn't phase out fossil fuel exports, the future looks grim.
To put it plainly, it is a death sentence, not phrases that I use lightly.
All of us have to respond on climate, all major economies in particular.
King Charles also keen to highlight dire climate threats, visiting mangroves which guard against coastal erosion, and being granted the honour of a chiefly title. Anthony Albanese landed this afternoon in Samoa in driving rain, another reminder of how quickly the weather can shift here and how vulnerable the region is to even small climate shifts. He could face some hard questions on fossil fuels and on climate finance. But the Prime Minister will also want to remind Australians of the progress the government's made, building deeper security and strategic links with the region. Like a new Pacific Police support group encouraged by Australia with an eye on China. Officers from across the region now hitting Samoa's streets for its first ever deployment, providing security for Chogam. But security threats take many shapes. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Apia.
5 people have been killed and at least 22 injured in a terror attack in Turkey. 1 male and 1 female terrorist armed with rifles and explosives opened fire at an aerospace company.
2 gun-wielding assailants stalked towards their target, the headquarters of one of Turkey's most important defence and aviation companies. First gunfire, then an explosion. Surveillance cameras capture a gunman up close when he enters the facility near Ankara. Special forces deploy, then communications are silenced.
I called my brother who was inside and said, "What happened?" He said, "A bomb had exploded." Then the phones shut off.
4 of the dead were employees of the aerospace company. One, mechanical engineer Zahida Güçlü, arrived at the entrance at the same time as the attackers. She was collecting a bunch of flowers sent by her husband. The 5th was the taxi driver who drove the pair to the location. Turkey's defence minister suggested the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, a listed terrorist group in Australia, was behind the attack. This complex houses Turkish Aerospace Industries, a major manufacturer of both civilian and military aircraft, and in particular drones. Those drones have been used extensively in Turkey's fight against Kurdish militants. The attack came just one day after a far-right ally of Turkish President Erdogan called for the imprisoned leader of the PKK to be released if he renounced violence and disbanded the organisation. The Turkish president was in Russia, attending a summit with Vladimir Putin.
I would like to express my condolences.
I condemn this heinous attack.
Our prayers are with all of those affected and their families, and of course also the people of Turkey at this very difficult time.
In response, Turkey launched more than 30 airstrikes against Kurdish militants in Iraq and Syria. Eric Twarchek, ABC News, Istanbul.
Israel has continued to attack southern Beirut, destroying residential buildings in a wave of violent strikes. It comes as Israeli authorities have arrested more than a dozen people on charges of carrying out missions for Iran.
Beirut's night sky lit up as Israeli strikes pound the capital. One hitting the empty office of pro-Iranian broadcaster Al Mayadeen. Hours earlier, the Israeli military issued evacuation warnings for the ancient port city of Tyre. Popular with tourists, the vibrant metropolis had largely been spared until now. Israel hitting buildings close to heritage sites, including the UNESCO-listed Roman Hippodrome.
It was the first time we heard these sounds. It was terrible, really terrible.
The Israeli military said it was targeting Hezbollah assets in the area, but Tyre is home to many civilians with no ties to the Iranian-backed terrorist group.
We took the children, grabbed what we could and fled. Suddenly, while we were sitting by the sea, we heard that our house had been destroyed.
Hezbollah firing more rockets at Israel, some as far south as Tel Aviv. All happening as the US Secretary of State was in Israel trying to negotiate ceasefires with Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza.
We're working to get clear understandings for Gaza's governance, for its security, for its reconstruction, and what the international community can do to help.
In Khan Yunis, Gazans are desperately searching for something to eat.
Sometimes we manage to get a pack of bread, but other times we leave empty-handed. Sometimes we and the children manage to eat, and sometimes we don't.
And as the fighting continues on two fronts, Israel continues to plan its retaliatory attack against Iran after a barrage of missiles earlier this month. And Israeli authorities have arrested more than a dozen people in the last fortnight accused of spying for Iran. Growing unease as US efforts to stem the violence falter. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
A 9-year-old boy has died and his father has serious injuries after a car crashed into the electric bike they were riding on the Gold Coast. The minivan mounted the footpath and struck the pair during a family ride at Robina. The boy's mother and brother witnessed the crash but were not injured. Paramedics say the boy was wearing a helmet and was resuscitated at the scene but died in hospital. The 47-year-old driver has not yet been charged.
It'll be up to these investigations to determine whether that tragedy was as a result of inappropriate driving behaviours or mechanical, or what actually led to this situation.
The woman at the centre of a mass rape trial in France has told the court she is completely destroyed, but hopes she can give courage to others by speaking out. Giselle Pellicot has been praised for allowing the trial to be held in public.
Leaving court to applause and admiration. Supporters have been here every day of this gruelling trial to cheer on their new feminist hero. Giselle Pellicot came face to face with her ex-husband Dominique, who admitted to drugging her in their family home. So he and 50 strangers he recruited online could allegedly rape her while she was unconscious over the course of a decade. Most of the accused men have denied rape, saying they thought they were playing a part in the couple's game. On the stand, Ms Pellicot spoke directly to her ex-husband, but refused to look at him. How could you have betrayed me to this point? How could you have brought these strangers into my bedroom? I'm a woman who is totally destroyed, and I don't know how I can pick myself up from this. Ms Pellicot chose to have the trial held in an open court, waiving her right to anonymity. She says she was motivated by a desire to lift the shame felt by rape victims and hopes the public trial will help change society. This is a case which has shaken and horrified the world and prompted deep soul-searching in France. Whether the country should change its rape law to include consent has been a hotly contested issue, and now a review has been launched into the legislation.
We want to reverse the paradigm and say that actually there is no consent unless the person has clearly expressed it in a free and conscious manner.
Thousands of protesters have taken to streets across France in recent weeks in solidarity with Giselle Pellicot and a growing push for change. The trial has reached its halfway point and is expected to continue until December. Bridget Rollison, ABC News.
Australia's big four banks are using artificial intelligence to help decide home loan approvals. Staff in call centres are also being assisted by AI, sparking fears that jobs could be cut.
At ANZ's new AI centre, workers are being taught how artificial intelligence can help them process loan applications.
So whenever you apply for a loan, we have to pick up all sorts of information such as pay slips, proof of employment, complex loan contracts. AI can now allow us to actually take information from documents, cutting the amount of time it takes from hours and hours down to sometimes mere seconds.
AI also acts as an over-the-shoulder assistant for about 1,200 call centre staff.
People have used this technology to very quickly summarise everything about what the bank has on file for the customer.
Unions are worried about job losses and they want banks to explain to staff how it will change their work.
We don't want to see a situation where finance workers or consumers in Australia are simply having AI foisted upon them and they are having to deal with whatever the banks decide is a good idea.
Now, the danger, particularly for financial institutions or any institution that is governed by certain codes of behaviour, is that those AIs will make mistakes.
The rapid pace at which AI is advancing means the technology is moving faster than the regulation. The European Union has already introduced some laws to regulate artificial intelligence, a model Australia could consider. ANZ says the risks are being carefully weighed up.
I don't think that's likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years of having a home loan completely decided by a machine. I think it's very likely, though, that the way we're going to buy homes will be fundamentally different.
Differences customers will soon see as they interact with Australia's biggest lenders. Nassim Khadem, ABC News.
To finance now, the founder and CEO of Australian technology leader WiseTech Global has resigned after a week of damaging revelations about his behaviour. Here's Alan Kohler.
Earlier this week, it emerged that WiseTech founder and CEO, billionaire Richard White, had bought expensive houses for women he was having affairs with and paying them big salaries. Today, a leaked letter by a former director accused him of intimidation and bullying. It was the last straw. The share price fell another 6.5%, taking the total loss of value to more than $8 billion in a week. And tonight, Richard White resigned, effective immediately. The market as a whole eased today with falls by miners, gains by banks. And in banking news, there is a rare split between them. It's about that loan buffer the bank regulator increased from 2.5% to 3% during the pandemic. It means, of course, that you can only get the loan if you can afford repayments at a 3% higher rate than you're actually paying. So we thought the banks all wanted it cut back to 2.5% as it was, so they can lend some more. But no, NAB and ANZ do. So does the Australian Banks Association, but today it emerged that Westpac and Commonwealth Bank want it kept at 3% because they're worried about delinquency. Also, they're doing fine, thanks. Speaking of banks, CBA released some analysis of its customer data today showing the impact of the tax cuts, which was quite big in the last quarter. But guess what? Spending did not rise at all. And the second guess what is that the 20% with the lowest incomes are the only ones reducing their spending. In other words, the poorest families are doing all the work of slowing the economy and reducing inflation. The US market fell last night, so did Hong Kong today, while Tokyo rose. Commodities mostly fell, gold, iron ore and oil all down by more than 1%, and the Aussie dollar continued to drift against the strong US dollar. And that's finance.
Coming up on 7:30, less than 2 weeks out from the US election, are black voters abandoning the Democratic Party?
I will be voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
Why? I believe that he would be a much better candidate.
Donald Trump has a certain kind of appeal to male voters in general, including male African-American voters.
Dude attacked his own country. He's finna be the president again. Come on, man.
To sport, in the AFLW's Indigenous round kicks off tonight in Cairns with a match-up between Hawthorn and Naarm. The second-place Hawks are aiming for their first grand final, but midfielder Matea Breed has already made history.
When Matea Breed steps into the Hawks Museum at Waverley Park, she's able to take in the achievements of Hawthorn's past Indigenous heroes. But connection to her own heritage has proved elusive.
My nana was part of the stolen generation and then raised in a Catholic mission, wasn't taught any of her culture or traditions or anything like that.
Breed grew up in Darwin, the daughter of 2 police officers. But after her grandmother died, Mum Rosanna took a job on the Tiwi Islands to reconnect with culture.
Indigenous cultures are passed down so heavily through oral history and traditions. That's why Mum made it such a mission to learn as much as she could and pass that down, even though it wasn't organic.
It's one reason Breed calls her mum, who played the game into her 50s, her hero.
To have someone that's so heavily in your corner to support you in every element is just, I might get a little bit teary.
Aussie Rules dominates the Tiwi Islands, with 900 men and women playing the game out of a population of just 2,500. with the Women's League fielding an impressive 7 teams alone. But the barriers to making it to the top, explored in the recent documentary Like My Brother, remain even today.
When you see that sort of talent, you just think if someone was there to nurture and support you and help you get to the next level, like the possibilities are endless.
In the meantime, Breed's extensive Tiwi family will be cheering her on against the Demons. Kate O'Halloran, ABC News.
And Queensland sporting heroes have been included with the latest inductees into the Australian Sport Hall of Fame. From the athletics track to the bowling green, some of our best ever sportsmen and women have been celebrated.
Olympic hurdles champion Sally Pearson is still coming to terms with her achievements.
It's quite surreal. All of a sudden you have this phone call saying, oh, we're going to induct you into the Sporting Hall of Fame. Like, really? What? Now?
One of 8 new inductees into Sport Australia's Hall of Fame, the 2012 London gold medalist counts herself lucky.
It's just who is the best athlete on the day, and if you can manage to be able to be that person, then there's no better feeling.
3-time surfing world champion Mick Fanning's beach days now look a little different in retirement.
The days that I get to take my kids out is so much more humbling, but also so much more rewarding than what I ever did. When I hear them screaming and having so much fun, best thing in the world.
Karen Murphy is the first female bowls player to receive the honour after news earlier this week the sport made the cut for the Commonwealth Games.
It's been a great week. Bowls in the Commonwealth Games means everything to our athletes and everyone who's gone before us.
Not so lucky was hockey. Former Kookaburras captain, now Hall of Famer Mark Knowles, not giving up hope of the sport's return to the Games.
The optimist in me would say, let's hope this is a reduced Games and we see back to normality in the future, but no one knows what the future at the moment looks like for the Com Games.
This latest round of inductees join the likes of Dawn Fraser, Richie Benaud and Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley as icons of this sport. Their inclusion in the Hall of Fame now cementing the legacy they've already left. 2 Hall of Fame members will be elevated to legend status on November 18. Erin Marsigovetere, ABC News.
Thousands of people are expected to strip off from Brisbane's Story Bridge on the weekend, and it's all in the name of art. The event is the brainchild of New York photographer Spencer Tunick, who has shot some similar photographs all over the world.
A recognisable Brisbane landmark about to tell a cheeky story.
Enjoy your sunrise, get it all off.
New York photographer Spencer Tunick is famous around the world for his eye for detail stripped bare.
It really comes down to the core of how we are on this earth together against all elements. You know, we're nature and everything around us affects our skin.
His previous canvases have included the Sydney Opera House and Bondi Beach.
I think there's definitely a bit of rock and roll in my work. Less so me, but more so the participants. You know, you really have to be rock and roll to want to get naked in a city.
Now the Story Bridge will show the naked truth.
Bridges to me are about connections and connectivity. I think the connection of the LGBTQIA+ community to its allies who are also posing together is such an important message.
Thousands are expected to attend the dawn shoot on Sunday.
It's quite a big, a big group of people that have to be involved in the logistics side of things, in closing the bridge especially. So, it's been a very large collective effort from the city.
Some people are coming from Sydney, some people from Asia. Yeah, so I'm pretty lucky about that.
The nude shoot is the centrepiece of Melt, a queer arts and culture festival taking over the city until November the 10th. It's sure to be spectacular. Toby Loftus, ABC News, Brisbane.
Weather now with Jacqui McLaren. And Jacqui, we've seen plenty of showers and storm activity about.
We have, Lexy, quite an active afternoon, that's for sure. Good evening, Queensland. Well, we saw the showers and storms kick off from around midday, bringing short bursts of heavy rain, lightning, damaging winds and large hail to the Wide Bay, Burnett and southeast regions. This evening, we saw a severe cell moving through the Sunshine Coast as well, leaving many homes without power. And it is important to note a severe thunderstorm warning is still current for parts of the southeast, so do stay up to date with those warnings. As for today's temperatures though, well, it sure was a warm one. Winton took out the hotspot title at a scorching 43.2 degrees. Further south and the Granite Belt had a cool start to the morning with 8 degrees the minimum there. And it was warm and humid in the southeast too, Brisbane reaching a top of 32 degrees. On to the satellite now. We can see that big cloud band stretching from the northern interior right down through central and southeastern parts. And it is this trough that has been triggering those showers and storms. And that is because we've got warm conditions ahead of that trough and plenty of moisture underneath it. Now, as this trough drifts offshore, the high in the Bight will extend a ridge along our coastline tomorrow. And that will bring a southerly change with it and cooler and calmer conditions. However, there is still a high fire danger warning about the interior with a severe heatwave warning for the peninsula. But it is almost the end of the working week, so let's take a look at your Friday forecast now. And in the north, we could see a morning shower or storm from Mackay southwards, but it will clear to a sunny afternoon. Townsville heading for a top of 32 for Cairns as well. Further south, and it's mostly sunny skies for central parts, 29 degrees for you, Miles. Roma heading for a sunny 30 degrees. In the southeast, we'll see some storms and showers overnight, light but clearing by the time the workday kicks off in the morning. A sunny afternoon to follow. The Sunshine Coast heading for 29 degrees, a little cooler on the Gold Coast at 26. A similar story for you, Brisbane, heading for a top of 30 in the capital, 29 for Redcliffe. Surfers, if you're lucky enough to get out for a Friday paddle, we've got some fun-sized waves around, so head to the northern breaks for the clean conditions. Boaties, it's a strong wind warning for you. Winds reaching up to 25 knots, seas around 1.5 metres. And looking ahead, some light coastal showers over the weekend with some pockets of sunshine in the mix. But Lexy, it sure is lovely to see some cooler temperatures on the way.
Oh yeah, it certainly is. Thanks, Jacqui. And that is news to the moment. Thanks so much for your company. We'll keep you up to date on our website. Here is 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson.